So last night I made a grave mistake. It was around midnight. I was getting ready to go to bed. I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna pop on Netflix. I'm just gonna like pop on something and unwind. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I was gonna do. What I made the mistake on doing was scrolling through the list of new releases or what's recommended for me and coming across the documentary Don't F with Cats. And I've been hearing about this for the past month. I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it, and I thought to myself, how crazy is it gonna be? What's the worst that's gonna happen? I literally had no idea about this story, and I follow true crime. I follow true crime quite a bit, and I still had zero idea this thing took place at all. Oh my God, I was awake until nearly 4 o'clock in the morning, binging this 3 episode limited series on Netflix, and I had so much trouble sleeping after the fact because I just kept running through everything in my mind. Now, look, to be fair, this documentary is a documentary heavily slanted in the favor of the animal rights group that were the ones that were online stalking Luka Magnotta, the person who is at the centerpiece of this documentary. And some people out there aren't happy with that, and I fully understand. But again, just looking at it from the perspective of which they've presented it, oh my God. I have cats. I used to have 5. One of them went missing a few months ago. We don't know what happened to her. And this dude killed cats, right? They say allegedly, but at this point, I think we know he did it. I think it's pretty fair to assume he did what he did. And I'm glad the documentary didn't show us all of that, because I didn't want to sit there and watch these cats being killed as I was, in bed with 3 of my cats on me getting warm because it's winter in Washington. So I'm kind of glad that neither I or them had to be subjected to all of that nastiness. But the story's fascinating. The story is absolutely fascinating because it starts off with this image of one boy, 2 cats. That was video. And in it, a hooded white male smoking a cigarette kills 2 cats. And it makes its way around the web as these things tend to do. And then people started looking into him, trying to find anything that they could in order to bring this guy to justice. And as a result of this, they got his attention. And when they got his attention, and this is my speculation on it, when they got his attention, he was trying to, after a while, lead them to him specifically. That's my take on it. But in the process of this, the group that they had formed grew to be so big and so massive that when there was a target who had presented himself as being the person in the videos, they went after him. And that person ended up committing suicide. Now, there are people out there who blame the group for this, and I think they do share some responsibility in regards to the dog pile and the mob mentality. But at the same time, this person willfully went on there and presented himself as the killer. So they thought they were doing the right thing by trying to find out everything they could on this guy. And again, that whole bit in the documentary is there, and I feel it could have been like better explained, better expunged upon, because it does not paint them in the best light. But you know what? At the same time, it's not meant to, and that's fine. Right? Like internet vigilantism is something that has had mixed results across the board. And so when I'm thinking about this and the fact that I spend a lot of my time on the internet and I follow a lot of true crime, and I've kind of, been involved in some of these investigations over the years and just kind of been around on 4chan and stuff and seen stuff happen, like you have to ask yourself, like, at what point are you complicit in these events having taken place? And that ultimately is the whole point of the situation with the group. But when the group, and this is according to the documentary, I'm not too sure how much of it is real. According to the group, once the dude took his own life, they moved to a smaller, more private group with people that they trusted in order to not point a spotlight at anybody else that would be unfair. You know what I mean? And I almost wonder if they did that because they felt guilty and this is a way for them to keep going while, not having the same mistakes. But that's where the documentary takes us. So somehow someone sends them a piece of information saying that the person you're looking for is Luka Magnotta. And I do believe that it was Luka Magnotta himself that sent that information, because this guy ran so many sock puppets of himself. He created his own fan clubs. He created this jet-setting lifestyle shown through Instagram and all these other things. He made himself appear to be larger than life, that if you were to Google Luka Magnotta, you would find this treasure trove of documents showcasing that he has been everywhere and done everything, and he is this wealthy, successful model and everything else. And that's the image he presented of himself. And that's what he gave to this group. I do believe he gave it to the group because it makes no other sense. Someone sent them, the person you're looking for is Luka Magnotta, and from there, they start following the rabbit hole. And man, that went pretty bad. It went pretty deep because Luka wanted the attention. And when he got the attention then turned towards the darker. And this is where, again, the group has been under some criticism, like they pushed him to do what he did. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think he always knew he was going to do something like this. He just wanted to wait until he had the audience to do it. Because here's what happened. He killed a guy. He recorded it. He uploaded it to a website called One Guy, One Ice Pick, or One Lunatic, One Ice Pick, and then sent it to people in the group, knowing that they would see it. And in the process, he also killed the dog, a little puppy. And I think he did that as a warning to them, or as a nod to them, because he, at this point, realizes that they're kind of like his fan base. They're diving into him. They're doing deep dives into him. But from there, he gets worldwide attention. There's a worldwide hunt for him, and they track him to Paris, and they try finding him in Paris. He has moved on from Paris, and he ends up going to Berlin, where he gets caught because another true crime aficionado runs an internet cafe and happened to be looking at Luka Magnotta, having seen Luka Magnotta in the news as Luka Magnotta walked into the cafe, or into the internet cafe, and then he was caught on the Interpol website looking at his own mugshot when 9 members of the Berlin police came in and arrested him, and they sent him back to Canada, where he is now life in prison for the murder of June Lin. And it's crazy because without the help of that group, they never would have caught him, right? Without the help of that group, they never would have caught him specifically, because the group had compiled all the documentation. They had followed his every move because he left them breadcrumbs. They figured it all out because this guy wanted to be caught. At the end of the day, Luka Magnotta wanted to be caught. He wanted people to know his name. I never knew his name before 12 hours ago. Now I know his name. And now I'm talking about him. I'm giving him exactly everything he wants. But this is such a compelling and dark and haunting story that I, being the true crime, macabre loving dude that I am, it hit every one of my receptors, right? It checked every box, because I could see myself being in the same situation as the activist here, of trying to find this guy, locate this guy, tracking his moves. It's not that difficult. When you leave the digital footprint, it's not that difficult. And these guys weren't experts. They weren't denizens of 4chan or 8chan or the deep web. They're just normal people who are computer nerds who just started investigating. But man, that's some creepy stuff, because Luka tried an odd defense, and one that I think would have potentially worked. He claimed he was an escort and that he had been groomed and kind of forced into committing these acts for a man named Manny Lopez. And no one could find Manny Lopez. No one knew who he was. There was no information about him. But one of his favorite movies was Basic Instinct. And if you go back and you watch the One Lunatic, One Ice Pick video, he recreates the opening of Basic Instinct. That was who he was mimicking when he killed June Lin. And then from there, he did it with an ice pick. Well, it was a modified screwdriver painted to look like an ice pick. I mean, he was recreating that scene. And in the movie, the man who died in the beginning of the film was Manny Vasquez. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you see like in The Usual Suspects. This is the kind of story that you would see coming out of Hollywood. It doesn't feel real. It just feels too perfect. The screenwriter wrote this. No, a deranged 29-year-old bisexual model from Toronto plotted this out for years. And I mean, plotted this out. He would go and talk with, he would talk about Manny for a long time, complain about him to multiple people, create a paper trail of this abuser in order to then fool people into thinking that he ended up having to do all this at the behest of somebody else who was in control of him. I mean, it's diabolically brilliant. But he gave it all away because he was mimicking somebody else. That's, once you can pull on that thread, everything comes unraveled. It was a fascinating 3-hour documentary that, like, I stayed up so late watching it, and I had not intended to do that. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch an episode, and I'm gonna go to bed, because it's what started off as a small, I don't want to say small, but started off as a horrendous act against an animal, turned into a violent, gruesome, terrible act against a person and another animal. And it would have been more. But you see, Luka thought he was smarter than everybody. Luka's ego got in the way. Luka had, delusions of grandeur, and he thought that people would fear him and celebrate him. And I'm pretty sure that this story, because it happened so many years ago, and it's been talked about before, he's got his own little fan club, but now more people are know about it because of Netflix. And I'm a little bit concerned about that because of the popularity of something like this and how we have seen, like with the Menendez brothers, the amount of media attention that they got didn't necessarily hurt them in the long run, right? They're behind bars for life, but they still got married and they're infamous and people talk about them. So at the end of the day, they're going to live on in infamy. Same with Luka Magnotta here. So does this documentary, kind of like Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery, does that have, a problem in our society? Are we giving a platform? Are we giving attention to the worst of the worst because we're fascinated by death? We're fascinated by what drives people to commit these heinous acts. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of knowing. Right? I learn about these people. I learn about their motives. I learn about their actions. I learn about who they are as people. I'm fascinated by it. I always have been, like I want to get into doing true crime podcasting because that's how fascinated I am by this kind of stuff. I've taken homicide writers courses, learning from actual homicide detectives, how cases are investigated and what goes on, because I'm fascinated by the entire process. I have been my whole life. So this documentary was completely hook, line, and sinker aimed at someone like me. And it sucked me in. And it freaked me out. And I'm sitting there alone in my room with my big screen TV and my headphones on. And I'm glued to this TV for 3 hours, knowing I should go to sleep because I had to watch my kids in the morning. And then freaking out, like, what if somebody came and took my kids? It's a whole bunch of stuff runs through your head when you're watching these sort of things. I would, if you are interested in the macabre or in this type of story, I would recommend you give it a watch. It's rule 0 of the internet. Don't F with cats. And that man broke rule 0. And that brought the internet down on him in a way that ultimately brought him to justice. But it also pushed him to a place where he had always intended to go, but it gave him the audience that he sought. And June Lin was the unfortunate victim of that. And it wasn't pretty. You know what I mean? Anyway, if you've seen it, I want to hear your thoughts. I almost want to do a live stream to have a discussion about it, because I feel like it's just such this thing where it's like, let's talk about it. Let's learn more about it. I want to know more. It's so weird. Anyway, if you have any other true crime documentaries on Netflix you want me to check out, let me know. They got a lot of them on there, and I'm behind on a bunch of them. So Anyway, I'll talk to you all later. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Please go ahead and hit that like. Go ahead and hit that subscribe and hit that bell if you want more of these kind of reviews. And I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day. And remember, don't F with cats. Seriously. Because they're precious and we love them. All right. See you guys.